Hey everyone, and welcome to the Two Dizzy Dames. I'm Megan, this is Lisa, and today we are standing in the beautiful Mount Carmel Cemetery in Hillside. Is it in Hillside?
Hillside, yes.
Hillside, Illinois. Because we are going to tell you about a little mob history. And so I'm going to let Lisa take it away, because when it comes to the more Chicago scene, I'm not very well versed, but she is like my little expert, constantly telling me fun stories. So go ahead, take it away. Tell us something fun.
Okay, so let's get started. So this is kind of some true crime. So we are at Mount Carmel Cemetery in Hillside, like Megan had said. And beautiful day. We got really lucky on this October day. Thank God, it's not really, really cold. And Al Capone is buried here. And really awesome. This place is huge, by the way. It's a massive cemetery. We've been driving around it. So Alphonse Capone, he was born in 1899. Well, I can't remember the year he died, but we'll show it to you here in a minute.
It'll be on the screen.
But he was two parents who were born not in America, but Alphonse Capone was born in Brooklyn, New York, to believe it or not even born in Chicago. And he came later when he started getting up in life in the organized crime. He actually wasn't a bad student either. He actually got pretty good grades in school until he decked a female teacher in the face.
Oh, wow.
And apparently, I don't know. So
allegedly.
I'll use the word allegedly a lot, because I'm not a historian. I'm going to start there. I'm not a professional historian. I just know some of the folklore from living in Chicago and growing up in it myself. So yeah, that's the story. Apparently he punched some teacher or hit her or something. And so I can't believe his grades were actually decent. He probably would have made something out of himself. But instead, he stopped going to school. He started getting involved in the crime stuff and found himself more and more in trouble. And just kind of went into that. And he worked under, and by the way, if you're wondering why he's got that scar on his face, because you know they used to call him Scarface, allegedly, he was working at a place in New York before he came over here to Chicago, and he was working in some bar as a bouncer or something, or I can't remember if it was a bar, hotel, or whatever, Harvard something. Don't quote me, I can't remember the name. But he made a comment about a certain woman's posterior. This guy, I know my names and dates are really bad, but the guy got really pissed and he slashed him in the face. He was drunk, and that's how he got his name Scarface. He was really self-conscious about it. So when Al Capone took pictures, he took pictures on the other side of his face where it didn't show the scar. He was very self-conscious, like I said, and sometimes he'd tell people, oh, I got this scar in the war. He didn't want to tell people how he really got it, but that's how he got it, allegedly. When Capone was in New York, he got sent by Johnny Torrio. Johnny Torrio was the guy he worked underneath in New York, and Johnny Torrio sent him to Chicago. And I'm not sure if this is right, but Johnny Torrio came to Chicago, and I think him or Al Capone, I can't remember, I think it was Johnny Torrio, took over for Big Jim Colosimo, who Big Jim Colosimo did run a lot in Chicago as well. So after all that or whatever, I guess Capone was running things, and I might also add, I heard that Capone actually was very charitable. He helped with like soup kitchens and stuff.
I've heard that too.
Like, I don't know if he was very charitable. And he basically he pretty much ran the south side of Chicago. Like, that was his thing. The south side. Bugs Moran run the north side. That's what he was doing. So I know this is a very old tale, and everybody has heard different stories of it. And it's a very famous tale. The St. Valentines Day Massacre. This is the crime part. This is a big deal that he did. So now many people believe that Capone was behind it, but there was never any proof. Nobody was convicted. And for those of you who don't know what happened, it was February 14th, 1929. And there was a garage at 2122 North Clark, from the north side. And it was an auto garage. And it was a snowy day, winter, because it was February. And there was in the garage, there was a mechanic. I don't know the mechanic's name, but his dog Highball was tied to the truck. Now, there was about 7 men, I believe, inside the garage, and they were waiting on Bugs Moran to show up. He was supposed to show up that day, but he didn't, because when he pulled up, he started coming up onto the garage. When he walked up, he saw a cop car driving by, and he's like, well, not going in there today, because he was supposed to go in there to discuss a shipment of liquor or something. So then he ended up not going in. Said he went to a favorite restaurant nearby to think about what he was going to do, because he just saw the cops, and he's like, but I think that really was a police car driving by, but who actually ended up walking into the garage was 2 men, Tommy guns and trench coats, and then 2 men dressed up as cops. So they walked into the garage, and all of a sudden you heard gunfire like crazy. What had happened was, these cops, these so-called cops, and the guys with the trench coats and the Tommy guns lined up every single guy, including the mechanic, which kind of wasn't fair because that guy wasn't involved. And he lined every single guy up and shot them up against this brick wall. And the dog was very traumatized. And
At least he didn't shoot the dog, because then I would have had.
No, they didn't. But sadly, I heard that the dog had to be put to sleep because of traumatic and stress.
Poor thing.
Because it was like it just witnessed something so stressful.
Right.
They knew. So yeah, it was pretty crazy. So it was this horrific crime that happened. And the weirdest thing that I found out was there was a business guy apparently who bought the bricks to the wall. Now, legend has it that if you buy a brick from that wall, you're completely cursed.
See, now this is where I like to come in on.
So I don't know though. That was the rumor though. But the guy, I don't know if it's true. My mom told me this, but I don't know if it's true. But I think this guy put it in some nightclub, The Wall or something, and I don't know if it's still around. I don't know whatever became of it. I think it might be in a museum, a crime museum. I'm not sure.
Interesting.
But that's the story that I had heard. And there once was a business here in Chicago that I absolutely loved. And side note, it was called Tommy Gunn's Garage, and it was a themed restaurant where you got to dress up and go in there, and it was one of those theme restaurants, and they have a complete show, and it was like you walk in the door and it's like you're in 1929, and it was really cute. And sadly it didn't make it after COVID. A lot of businesses were
that's
lost.
unfortunate, because that would have been fun to go to.
This city has so much history to it. I mean, John Dillinger was shot behind the Biograph Theater. I mean, that was a pretty.
We really should do a downtown ghost tour.
We really should. But there was and the cemetery that we're in, by the way, there are a lot other mobsters buried here, like gangsters and stuff. I mean, this is a very Italian Catholic cemetery, so it's really neat. All the Italian families that are buried here. It's kind of cool. So, yeah, that's the story of Al Capone. He had a very and looking at his grave, his mother had 9 children.
Wow.
He had one sister who died at the age of 1 who didn't make it, but he did have a lot of brothers and sisters, and his brothers did help him in his business, his underground, prohibition business, which I can't believe prohibition lasted for so long, but it really did. But he made a killing, no pun intended.
I was trying not to laugh. I felt it would have been inappropriate.
Maybe back then, but no, not so. So yeah, that's the story. That's as much as I know. And hey, if I'm wrong and you want to correct any facts, and if I'm wrong, hey, please, by all means, put them in the comments. I'm not a historian. I'm just some gal that grew up on the south side of Chicago that heard all this folklore.
Yeah, and if you have ever been to this cemetery, we'd also like to know about your stories here. And have you ever seen anything in this cemetery? Because I would love to come here at night, but it closes at 5. So yeah. I don't want to be a creeper walking the exterior fences with my camera on Zoom. Yeah. But if you've ever been here or you have any legends from this cemetery, pop them in the comments. Start a conversation. We would love to hear from you.
Absolutely. There are other cemeteries in the Chicago area, we should totally do, that have their own haunted history to them.
Yeah.
And we'll have to retouch on them, such as Bathurst Grove Cemetery. There's Resurrection Mary at Resurrection Cemetery. There's so many things. I mean, the list goes on with just Chicago has so much history to it.
It does. Chicago has a lot of tragedy to it.
Oh, and Holmes. We can't forget that guy.
Yes.
That guy, that awful person.
Oh, we could do an entire serial killer. What is it with serial killers in this area? This area, is it the winters that makes people kind of just...
Oh, that's right, because Gacy was in Chicago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got a lot of crime history. Not
That's
even
true.
just mobster crime, just a lot of crime history in this area. So if you know anything that you would like us to talk about next time, maybe from the Chicago area, leave us a comment.
In the comments, let us know. Well, I guess that concludes our...
Yeah, so thank you so much for joining us on this very rare occasion where we get to film together and not be on FaceTime.
Not be on Zoom.
Or Zoom, yeah,
Zoom,
I guess it's Zoom, not FaceTime. So thank you so much, and we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.